From the News Channel 5 network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. A year and a half after it occurred, the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol went primetime Thursday night. The House Select Committee that's been investigating what happened, looking at thousands of documents and interviewing thousands of witnesses, they had held their first of 6 public hearings that will be going on this month to let the public know what's found. The sessions are expected to receive live coverage from almost all the nation's TV networks and platforms, at least for most of their sessions. After all the leaks, the sometimes bombshell disclosures from the committee, the court fights, and even some indictments bringing contempt of Congress charges against some of those who would not share their information. What else is there to learn about what happened and who was involved in planning it? Is the committee making a compelling case? And if so, what does the congressional group hope will happen in the future? Finally, does the public and voters still care about this threat to our democracy, or have they all moved on? This week on Inside Politics, to discuss these and other questions growing out of these issues, are our 2 best political analysts, one Democrat, Larry Woods, and the other Republican, Bill Phillips. Gentlemen, thank you as always for coming on the program. It was a fascinating night Thursday night.
It was.
So what did you think, Larry, for you? Did you feel like that the committee did what it wanted to do? Did they make a compelling case? I know this is the first of 6 bites at the apple. Did they get a pretty good first bite?
They did make a compelling case. Obviously, there's a lot of follow-up to be done and a lot of facts to be filled in, but it was a far better production and performance than I expected, quite frank. I've seen a lot of congressional hearings, as both of you have, and they did a superb job of what their purpose was. A, educate the country about what happened on January the 6th, and B, start drawing conclusions about who was responsible.
Part of the audience for this bill has to be Republicans. They're the ones who still say the election in 2020 was fixed and that it was stolen. So they're the ones who still think Joe Biden's not a legitimate president. Did you find what the committee presented last night to be much-watched TV, enough that people will come back to watch it again?
I think last night reopened the wound of January 6th. And I don't know how many watched it last night, but as the chatter begins and there's coverage by the media, I think it's going to build momentum, just like it did 50 years ago with Watergate.
Did it live up to the hype, Larry? There was talk going to some people on the committee and off the committee that this was going to change. These hearings are going to change history, or they're going to blow the dome off the Capitol. This was going to what was going to be said was going to be so shocking and unbelievable.
I think that's a good description of January 6th, not necessarily a good description of the program, the television production last night. There wasn't enough time, and as we were all talking about before this show started today, the key to this whole thing are what the witnesses themselves say. And we saw a lot of that from some very important people last night, from Bill Barr to Ivanka Trump, etc. But they're going to have to put on a lot more of that to change history, not to change history, but to make history. And it sounds like they've got the resources to do that.
Bill, the one thing the committee did seem to do is, even though it was made up of many people that were also on the 2 groups that went up and argued the case to not only impeach but remove Donald Trump from office twice during his term, none of them spoke last night. Those who spoke were the committee chairman and Liz Cheney, a Republican. In fact, one of the leading Republicans in the House until all this came up. And then they used people's, the words out of the mouth of the president's aides, out of his attorney general, and even out of his own daughter to basically say he knew that the election was lost. He knew what he was saying about a false election was not true. He misled everybody and led a coup. Did they make a good case in your mind about that?
Well, last night was a television production, and so you had the chairman and the vice chairman. It was very well orchestrated. When I first heard they had brought in a former ABC executive to do it, I thought, oh, well, this is going to be a waste. I was wrong. I think they did an effective job. And then the hearings themselves, you're going to start hearing from other members, I'm sure.
Larry, that ABC former executive also had some involvements in suppressing some stories about a sexual predator. Is that the kind of mixed message the committee wanted to have out? Was it worth having to deal with that? Did he bring enough to the table that's going to be overcome or not paid attention to?
I think a producer of Channel 5 here in Nashville could have done it for them. I think many other professional television and film people, video people could have done it for them. So yes, if I'd been the chair or co-chair, I think I would put a little more thought into that. But 90% of the country isn't going to know about it, isn't going to pay attention to it, isn't going to care.
Well, in terms of whether people care, Bill, do you feel like that the public's going to tune into this? I mean, I haven't heard this word used since back in the late 70s, but there seems to be a malaise out there about our politics. I mean, I think people are sort of saying there's a pox on all these people, all these elected officials. Everybody's numbers are kind of down. Is it the feeling that the people are going to watch this? We do not, at the time we have this conversation, know what the ratings were for watching this last night.
Well, politics is, people are worn out by it right now, and I don't think there's a whole lot of interest in last night. But, Watergate, there was a series of hearings on the House side that never got anywhere. In fact, the Nixon White House did an effective job of killing that committee. It was the Senate later that brought it up and started, and even that stumbled in the beginning.
And Larry, going back to the Watergate era, which is now almost 50 years ago, that committee, when it started, the feeling among most Republicans was that this was a third-rate burglary, which Ron Ziegler, the president's press secretary, called it Watergate when it first started, but there really wasn't much that had anything to do with the president. But when those hearings were over, after Howard Baker from Tennessee asked, what did the president know, when did he know it, and after Alexander Butterfield, under questioning by Fred Thompson, who was attorney on that committee, said yes, there was a taping system within the White House. When those hearings were over, things had changed completely.
All the Earth's surface shifted during that Senate Watergate hearing. I recall the House getting nowhere also. When the witnesses who came forward, like Butterfield primarily and others, when the witnesses came forward who had actual firsthand knowledge of the president's involvement and responsibility, then people, other than just ardent political people like us, then people in general snapped to attention, really started paying attention. So I think if we see more film clips from the depositions of Bill Barr, Ivanka Trump, and the others, as those continue to come out in the next few hearings, I think more and more people pay attention and care.
But Bill, what happens when it's over? When the Watergate hearings were over, we eventually moved to looking through the tapes, and then Nixon resigned. President Trump's not president anymore. He's not going to be leaving office. What does the committee want to have done, and what's going to happen at the end of the day to, okay, we know about this stuff, so what?
Well, this is when I wish I was a lawyer, because maybe I could figure out what was going to happen, because you've got a former president that they're obviously trying to I almost said hang. They're obviously trying to convict of being responsible for this, but what do you do with him? Ban him from life.
Bill Phillips and Larry Woods are our guests. We're talking about what happened with the Thursday night hearing of the January 6th special committee, the bombshells it released, and what happens now. More on the conversation with the two of them after this break.
This is a